Good morning.
Good morning.
The blessing of the Lord be upon you.
Bless you in the name of the Lord.
Thank you. We are continuing in our study of the book of the Revelation of Jesus Christ as given to the Apostle John. And of course we are continuing in that study on the basis that it's a continuation of Old Testament prophecy up to the destruction of Jerusalem, and then a prophetic look at what would happen to the Roman Empire, essentially, next part of the book of Revelation with the 7 trumpets and the 7 vials or bowls of wrath. We just finished the section on the bowls of wrath and are beginning in chapter 17 this morning. We had a picture up last week, and I told you it was kind of fuzzy and didn't really look too good, so I found another picture to introduce chapter 17. And this is, it's really clear, and kind of explain this to you. This is the great prostitute and the beast that she rides. And so chapter 17, especially the first 6 verses, deal with this picture. So let's read this, and then we will break down these verses. Do a little bit of review, but break down these verses. Hopefully get through it today. Revelation chapter 17, verses 1 through 6. John is relating this vision that he's seeing. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, "Come, and I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute," that's the woman here sitting on the beast, "who is seated on many waters." And you can see the beast is on waters, or the sea. Verse 2, "with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of those of whose sexual immorality the dwellers of the earth have become drunk." See what she's got in her hand? She's got a golden cup that's filled with wine that she uses to seduce the kings of the earth. Verse 3, and he carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. Notice that change there. He sees this vision, and now he's carried away into a wilderness. We'll deal with the figurative language that it involves in a moment. "And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names." Now, we don't have those names here, but essentially it's the same beast. "And it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet." I don't see too much purple there, but you can see the scarlet. Well, she got a purple cape on. "Holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead," which I don't think is represented here in this picture, "on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes of the earth's abominations." Now, we've heard of names being written on foreheads before. This is a continuation of that. And mother of prostitutes, not only is she a prostitute, she is like the madam of the prostitutes. She's the head of the prostitutes. Verse 6. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And the abominations and such that the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers of the earth have become drunk, that essentially is the blood of martyrs, the blood of Christians. They enjoy persecuting God's people, is what's essentially being presented here in this figurative language. I believe that's how the people that John was initially writing to, 7 churches of Asia at the time of, right before the destruction of Jerusalem, would understand this figurative language. The picture that they would get from this, what would come about to them. Now, we're going to drop on down to verse 18. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. So that's dropping, what, 12, 13 more verses down. But I wanted to show you that so you know what's being represented here. She is a city. Remember when we looked, what was it, chapter 12? About the woman who gives birth to the man-child. She could also be represented as a city, but it's a city of the ecclesia, the called out from the beginning of time, God's people. I'll probably express this in a little while. The book of Revelation, some people, in some scholars' estimation, is a tale of 2 women. The woman in chapter 12 and the woman here in chapter 17. Or the tale of 2 cities, going off of Oliver. Who wrote the tale of 2 cities? Dickens, right? Dickens?
Don't look at me. Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes wrote it, yeah. There you go. But, yeah, the tale of 2 cities. The city of God's people versus the city of Satan's people, essentially. Well, that's what we're looking at here. Now let's break it down. Verses 1 and 2. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls, they poured out the 7 bowls of wrath. And again, this is proleptic. This happens a long time after John writes this. So don't think this is contemporary with John. This is John looking way off, being told something that happens in the future. But something that would be interesting, of interest to the people of his time. Said to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers of the earth have become drunk. This links to the previous cycle of judgments, the bowls of God's wrath. Because this angel, he's been involved in pouring this out. Now he comes, he says, let me explain what's going on here. Let me show you with these bowls of wrath what is going to occur. Now you have chapter 17, it's going to show some, but then 18 is really going to get into the fulfillment of this bringing down of this woman. Again, it's prophetic literature. The angel acts as a guide, leading John into a deeper revelation of cosmic justice. But it's, again, prophetic. Like if you go back to the a book of Ezekiel, there's a time when Ezekiel is led through a new temple by an angel. And Ezekiel describes that. And some people, some scholars say, well, that's the second temple after the first temple's destroyed. Others say, no, that's a third temple. After the second temple's destroyed at Jerusalem, now there's going to be another temple. I don't totally agree with that. I think he's getting a prophetic look at, a figurative look at what the church is going to resemble. Not necessarily a physical temple, but along those lines of something that is sanctified and different. The second part of this, come, I will show you the judgment. And the Lord's judgment on the Roman Empire, it's not arbitrary or capricious, or arbitrary and capricious. The angel shows John the legitimate judgment of Rome. Here's why it's being destroyed. There's this prostitute who is a city that's doing terrible things and got what seems to be the whole world going against God's will. The judgment is spiritually based. The great prostitute, and listen, I'm going to use that term throughout here. A lot of commentaries, a lot of scholars, it's the woman on the beast, or even using the old term, the harlot. I'm going to use the term that's used here, so that we get the full impact of this. The prostitute. And the reason I do that, because it's a loaded metaphor. In biblical literature, prostitution often symbolizes covenant unfaithfulness. Like in the book of Hosea, what was Hosea told to do? Go marry a woman of harlotry. But that represented Israel's idolatry. Ezekiel chapter 16 is basically the same thing. Also, Isaiah chapter 1 deals in the same way. I don't have those up there, but you get the idea where this concept comes from, that God dealing with Old Testament Israel. So sexual immorality is also used as a metaphor for idolatry. Here, it's just not spiritual adultery, but it's systematic corruption. And when we get especially to chapter 18, you'll see that it's economic, it's political, and it's religious. And it's seduction in all three of those realms. Remember when we talked about how that if you don't put the pinch of incense on the altar and say that Caesar is Lord, and get the mark on your forehead, you can't buy or trade, you're going to starve to death? That's economic seduction, isn't it? To get into this idolatry. The term great suggests prominence and influence, not merely moral depravity. It's not just great sins, but the greatness of the totality of the influence that is there. These forces are at war with God's reign, God's will, and God's order. And that's the reason why this judgment is coming. Yes. And it goes back to that chapter 12 where Satan could not stop the man-child from being born, and that represented Christ, and he tries to kill him, but he he goes to heaven and reigns. So what does Satan do? He turns his attention to the offspring, to the church. But it's fighting against the will of God. Who does he get to help him? The sea beast and the land beast. And the picture that we saw, the sea beast that comes up out of the sea, seated on what? Many waters. The great prostitute is seated on many waters. And this directly references Babylon. You go back to Jeremiah chapter 51 and verse 13. You see that Babylon was a city seated on many waters, or a place of many waters. And remember the story from the book of Daniel, when Babylon is destroyed. They had two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, but the city was built between these rivers, or maybe it was just the Tigris that separated, but the city was like an island, and it was protected, and they had gates around. It was very hard to get into the city to attack the city. But what the Medes and Persians did, they built a dam upstream, lowered the waters of the river, and came in under the gates. They didn't build the gates and walls of the city down underneath the river to the bottom, and they came in underneath and destroyed them. But the concept is there to, again, build up our understanding of Babylon being a city, and this mystery of Babylon referring to the city that was controlling the empire, Babylon, which we're going to see is Rome. Luke chapter 2, verse 1. Well, back to the water symbolized peoples, multitudes, and nations in Revelation chapter 7:15, suggesting global reach and dominion, and that would be an empire, the Roman Empire. But in Luke chapter 2, verse 1, I just came upon this. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that, now notice this phrase, all the world should be registered. Does that mean that the Native Americans had to be registered? The Incas and all those, the Aleutian Islanders, up in Alaska and all. Does that mean them? Does that mean the people in Australia? No. The people that John was writing to would understand that as the people of, that'd be the Roman Empire. The world to them was the Roman Empire. Figurative language.
The water.
Pardon?
The water. Roman Empire would be the water.
No, talking about people. Okay? Again, in those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. But that was Roman citizens. Jesus was a Roman citizen. The Jews were Roman citizens. They didn't have all the, how do I want to put it, they didn't have all the rights as Roman citizens, but they were considered Roman citizens because they were under control of the Romans. You understand that concept? They had to go back and register in their cities, their original cities. That's why Joseph and Mary had to go to Bethlehem to register.
And that applied to most of the known world at that time. That
See-
applied to most of the known world. The whole
Well-
Mediterranean area was.
Yeah,
Well,
Mediterranean area, northern Africa, clear over to like the Indus River. Yes. Up into Europe. But what I'm showing is how these people would understand the world as used here. They wouldn't consider everybody in the whole world. They considered the Roman Empire. And, okay, moving on. With whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality. And then you move on. If that's the world, then the kings of the earth are the kings or rulers of those provinces or nations that make up the Roman Empire. These are political leaders who, to please the empire, are complicit with Babylon, and remember that's a figurative term here, Babylon's corruption. This is not just personal sin, but adoption of Rome's idolatry and exploitation. They do what Rome says to do. Now, the closest thing I can probably imagine to this is the old Soviet Union. Remember, the old Soviet Union was made up of, I don't know how many different SSRs. Different little nations or states, not just Russia, but all these different little states like Ukraine, Georgia, and all of these pledged allegiance to the Soviet Union, but who was in control of all of them? Moscow, wasn't it? What Moscow said, you better do. Did they like Moscow? Did they like being under that control? No. But they got their economic stimulus, so to speak. They got about everything from, they got their power from Moscow. They did what Moscow said until it came to a point where I think we can get away from those people. And they're still fighting over there today, right? That's what the Ukraine situation is about even today. It's kind of convoluted. Russia would like to have them back for different reasons, but they don't. Most of them don't want to go back. Some of them do. Some of them don't. It's basically a civil war. But that's what we're seeing happening here with Rome. The nations aligning with Babylon's values. As they align with Babylon's values, they are at war with God's kingdom because they're doing Rome's bidding. And if the Roman emperor says, here's how we're going to do it, you're going to persecute the Christians, what are they going to do? They're going to persecute the Christians. And we'll develop that more in just a little while. So there's Rome's idolatry being exploited on them. That's a proper way to phrase it. The dwellers on earth have become drunk. Drunkenness implies loss of discernment, moral stupor, and addictive dependence. The wine of immorality suggests that Babylon's influence is intoxicating. It starts out pleasurable, just like wine, just like alcohol, just like the drugs that people take. It starts out pleasurable and then numbing. After a while, you kind of forget about all your troubles, but ultimately it is destructive. They were destroying their own nations. And when they finally wake up to it, they say, what can we do? Loss of discernment. They could no longer determine right from wrong. A moral stupor. Well, if you can't determine right from wrong, if you can't know the difference between a man and a woman, then how can you know the difference between what is sin and what's not sin? See that point? That's happening with us today. But then addictive dependence. Well, I know this is wrong, but I can't stop it. I just can't stop. I got to continue on with it. Because that's just the way the world is. There's a passage in the book of Acts where one of the complaints about the disciples, about Christians, these people who have turned the world upside down have come here. The problem with that statement, the Christians were turning the world back, right side up. And the people who were caught in that lack of discernment couldn't see that the world had been turned upside down. They didn't know how to get out of it because they didn't want to accept God's way. And so many forces were going to be opposing them. Verse 3, so he carried me away in the Spirit. What does that mean, in the Spirit? Again, that's like a vision. He's not leaving where he's at, but he's projected into a different place. He's projected into a wilderness where he's going to see more about this prostitute and this beast that she is riding on. A vision in the wilderness. A wilderness symbolizes spiritual desolation or divine judgment. Think of Israel's testing in the desert when they leave Egypt. Egypt was a fairly modern nation for their time. And the children of Israel go across the Red Sea. Egypt's political leader is destroyed, but they're out in the wilderness. There's no water, there's no food. Moses is trying to lead them. It's a period of testing, isn't it, for the children of Israel? Can they get along following God's will? They failed for 40 years, didn't they? Or more. Never really got over it. There were times, some good times, as long as Joshua was leading them, they did well. But it's also a period of divine judgment. But again, testing, how about Jesus' temptation? He went out to the wilderness. This is a place where truth is revealed and deception is stripped bare. When you get away from all the delusions of materialism, the worldly stuff, the worldly facade that Satan throws up there, when you get alone with God, who do you have to deal with? Yourself and God. That's it. So he's out in the wilderness. Truth is being revealed to him. Deception now is going to be stripped bare. So John is spiritually transported to witness a cosmic drama, echoing prophetic visions like Ezekiel's or Daniel's. But what vision did Ezekiel see? He saw several. How about the dry bones? Is that Ezekiel 37? Or, well, I don't have it up there. I think it was 37, the dry bones. And then Daniel saw visions, and they bothered him so much. What's going to happen to God's people? Well, understanding the vision, God's people, God's nation was going to be destroyed, and there was going to be a new kingdom, and that bothered him. Well, part of this, what he's seeing, is the scarlet beast. Daniel saw some beasts. Daniel, that was Daniel chapter 7, wasn't it? Where he sees beasts, a couple different chapters in Daniel. But the scarlet beast, the color evokes royalty, blood, and sin, according to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 18. It's the sea beast. It's the sea beast from Revelation 13, representing political power, empire, and anti-God systems. This sea beast, it comes up. It doesn't come down from heaven. It comes up out of the mass of humanity. Just like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. Those empires that Nebuchadnezzar sees in that image. They're rising up. Political power from the earth. God allows it. God allows it. We'll talk about more how God does these things. But God allows this beast to come forth to do his will. And what is his will? To punish his covenant people, Israel, for their breaking the covenant. It has blasphemous names. And these are claims of divine authority or godlike status which echo Roman emperors demanding worship. We'll talk about Domitian later on. And Domitian in the AD 90s actually took the name Lord and God. But we'll talk about that later. 7 heads and 10 horns is a composite of Daniel's beasts, symbolizing completeness of oppressive rule. The 7 heads are later interpreted as both mountains and kings. We'll get to that in just a little while. But they are a picture of Rome's 7 hills. That's why we relate this scarlet beast to the Roman Empire, but this adorned woman is sitting on this beast, and she's like the capital. She's the head of this empire. The adorned woman that's in this picture then, purple and scarlet with gold and precious stones and pearls. The purple and scarlet are colors of wealth and imperial power, but also of sin and blood. Gold and jewels express external beauty, making internal corruption. Masking internal corruption. Like Tyre in Ezekiel 28. In Ezekiel 28, Tyre, there's a beautiful Look at the king of Tyre, the prince of Tyre, oh, beautiful, adorned like this, blah, 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 but he's condemned. And there are places where, and that might be the place where scholars will suggest, well, that's a picture of Satan when he was an archangel, Lucifer. But you also have Babylon in Isaiah chapter 47 that's talked about in that way. Well, it's just picking up on that Old Testament apocalyptic literature. Her attire mimics the priestly garments of Exodus chapter 28, but she is corrupt. She's a counterfeit ecclesia, a counterfeit church in contrast to the true church, which is New Jerusalem. So, Revelation can be viewed as what? A tale of two cities. This city of the world that's led by this prostitute, and the city of God, New Jerusalem. Or, as the grander theme, a tale of two women, going back to Revelation chapter 12, the woman who brings forth the man-child and all of that offspring that he has, his church, and this woman who is the prostitute. Are you kind of following me okay on this? We're going to explain a little deeper as we go. It'll come together. The golden cup of abominations appears attractive but contains spiritual poison. Remember which Indiana Jones movie became the chalice? The cup, you know, and they're looking for that cup because the Nazis think that if you get that cup and drink out of that cup, you'll live forever. And you know, they get into that temple and there's all these cups, and they got gold cups and silver cups and jeweled cups and whatever. And which cup is it? Well, Jesus was a poor carpenter and humble. It's the wooden cup, right? So, but the attractive one is the golden cup, and that golden cup, that's expensive, and that's what a king would drink out of. And well, yeah, it appears attractive, but what's in it is spiritual poison to these kings. These various kings who are in collaboration with Rome, the Roman Empire. False religion, idolatry, moral decay, they're all in there. And this echoes Jeremiah chapter 51, verse 7. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand. The Lord's still in control. Who allowed Babylon to come up to destroy Jerusalem? The Lord did, because Jerusalem in 606, 596, 586 BC, they were corrupt and they needed to be destroyed. And that's why God raised up the original Babylon to destroy them. But it was a gold cup in the Lord's hand. He used them. Her fornication is not sexual, but spiritual, making alliances with worldly powers in rebellion to God's will. And again, that goes back to that apocalyptic language, figurative language, that idolatry is pictured as sexual immorality or fornication, adultery against God. Now, The name on her forehead, Mystery. Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. The forehead is a place of identity. Compare that with the seal of God on the saints in Revelation chapter 7, verse 3. But there was also a seal that the ones who put the pinch of incense on the altar and said, Caesar is Lord, they would receive a seal too. It was a marking that identified the people. Well, she's got a marking. Here's the mystery, Babylon the Great. And a mystery, it's just not hidden, but it's sacred and it's symbolic. And this is a theological code. Babylon the Great is an archetype of rebellion, pride, and persecution. They went against God. How do we know that? Go back to the book of Daniel. Belshazzar, what did he do? He took the golden, he took the articles, the consecrated articles that had been taken from the temple, put in the treasury in Babylon. He took those and was using them for an orgy. And that's when the handwriting on the wall comes, and that very night, Babylon was destroyed. Back in the book of Daniel. Theological. That was rebellion, that was pride, and it was a form of persecution. Babylon is both a city and a system. The empires that exalted themselves against God is that basic system, what they were doing. And in John's time of writing, that is Rome. Mother of harlots, she births spiritual corruption. She births idolatry. Because every nation that she takes has their own idol god, and she says, you worship all the gods, you accept all the gods. They would even accept Yahweh, the God of Israel, but they didn't like the Jews, the people of Israel, because they said, no, there's only one God. Now, as long as the Jews didn't press the issue, they were allowed to survive. When they pressed the issue, they were destroyed. Christians pressed the issue. They would never bow down to those other gods, so they were considered treasonous. What do you do to treason? People who are convicted of treason, what's their punishment?
Death.
Death. These false religions were compromised churches, so to speak, seductive ideologies. She is drunk with the blood of the saints and the martyrs. This is a grotesque intoxication. She revels in persecution. You've probably seen movies of what Christians went through and how that the rulers, the Caesars of Rome, and leaders in cities and these individual nations, they bring the Christians into like Colosseums and turn gladiators out there, and they'd fight for a while, and then they'd stop and they would look up at the leaders, and the leaders would go thumbs down, right? And they'd kill the Christians, and the people would just, yeah, Yeah, way to go. Yeah, we love it. And that's where the term blood sport comes in. They saw it as a sport. It was for their entertainment. Cruelty, death became their entertainment. Martyrs of Jesus are the faithful who resisted empire worship and bore witness even unto death. Her drunkenness is not just cruelty, but an addiction. An addiction to power, domination, and spiritual violence, but even death. Loving it. And does maybe the best example we could give is the early 20th century or mid 20th century, getting into with the communists and the Nazis. How many people they put to death, and it's like they loved it, they cheered it on. That's what was going on at this time. John's reaction. See that? That's first part of verse 6, isn't it? He's stunned. That's not the right word that he uses.
Marvel, thank you.
He marveled. Or, what'd you say, Lynn?
Wondered.
Wondered. He wondered. He marveled. He's astonished. He's looking at this, and why is he stunned?
Somebody as beautiful for her could be as evil.
Yeah, go back to that picture. How could something so beautiful, just do away with the beast for a moment, how could a woman so beautiful be so evil? Happens, doesn't it? It happens. It's just not just by poor, but perhaps by the seductive beauty masking such evil. And this mirrors the disciples' challenge, discerning spiritual deception that comes clothed in splendor. How many people? Danny talks about the woman with the robes. Somebody walks in with the robes and the big hat and carrying a staff. Oh, they look so...
Silly.
How could they be evil? No, they look so impressive. Wow. And they've got gold, maybe gold all up along in the front. They got that altar and all this kind of just, that is so impressive. It's such a beautiful, ornate is the word. Yeah. How could that be bad? That is so beautiful. Satan has the ability to deceive people with things like that. That's our challenge even today, isn't it? To discern that spiritual deception that comes clothed in splendor. Like Indiana Jones with the chalice. That's not what Jesus would. Jesus wouldn't have had a golden chalice to drink out of at the Last Supper.
A little bit off subject, look, in our lifetime, we had preachers, and it was reverence. And You gotta throw in the bishops and all that sort of thing. And now, the preacher has been elevated to, pastor,
Yeah.
which is so far, reverend is bad enough, but a pastor goes away with your elders.
In biblical language, New Testament biblical language, an elder is a pastor. That's his work. But you elevate someone who's not qualified to be an elder to pastor. Give him authority over elders, you're doing something that's not scriptural. Yes, I agree.
And he's just a preacher.
Yeah.
You're just a preacher. You're not any more reverent than I am, than the rest of us, and you just keep taking more power with what they're called. Completely out of order.
And they expect to be addressed with terms of authority, so to speak. Okay, I think that's pretty much where I wanted to get to today. And we'll take up describing the beast. We pretty much got the woman, nailed that down to, we're talking about the beast is the Roman Empire, but the woman, the prostitute is Rome, where the power is centralized in those Caesars, those emperors. And next week, Lord willing, we'll get into the beast itself. All right? Thank you so much for your time.